Hello, people. Welcome to the Lee Cole 3 podcast. And my good buddy, pretty much my partner now, and does some heavy research in James Proctor. How you doing, James?
Hey, I'm doing good, Lee. How are you?
Very good. And, it's funny because somebody was saying you should do the Rizzuto family, and I kept avoiding it.
hmm
And I just read about the Rizzuto family from A to Z.
Yeah.
That whole story is absolutely amazing.
Yes.
And the son,
hmm
Vito, he seemed out of the three. You had you had first the father,
Yeah. Nick.
Nicholas, and then you had
hmm
the son that was killed, Nicholas. But Vito
Yeah.
seemed to be the guy out of the three that was really in control of the family. Would you say that's right?
Yeah. You would. He was really someone that was well respected but very dangerous, and so a lot of it's a definitely different than what we see with the five families. I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of murders. I mean, not saying there wasn't with the five families, but it
Oh,
went to a
this
different
is not.
level.
Yeah, this is on a whole different level. I mean,
Yeah.
this violence and the revenge.
hmm
This is a story about revenge. This is about
Exactly.
this is about a son that gets out and he had his son murdered and his father,
hmm
and he's dying.
Yes.
And so he has to take out the people that killed his son, that killed
Yep.
his father, and he
Yep.
wants to do it before he dies. He only has a couple years left when he gets out.
Yep.
And do you find that very fascinating that this man wanted to get these people whacked before he died?
Oh, I did. It's just amazing to me, how everything just fit into place, and it's like something you would see in a Hollywood movie or something.
Exactly. So, let's start. Okay, so we're going to start off with the father. Why don't you give us some information on the dad? Now, uh,
Yeah.
Nicholas Nicholas Rizzuto. Uh,
hmm
we know. Okay, he was born in 1946 in Sicily. And why don't you pick it up from there?
Yeah. So anyway, he was born. Yeah. So Vito was born in '46, but yeah, Nicolo was was also born in Sicily, then came to to Canada, and so he had actually spent some time as well. He had family that was in Paterson, New York. His father had actually
His
gotten
grandfather.
killed.
His
Yeah,
grandfather. His
Vito's
grandfather.
grandfather. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so
Yes.
he was definitely just it just seems very tragic as we go through this story. You'll see just a lot of people around him was killed. But anyway, Vito ended up getting married. They had three kids, and then in the '70s, his father was involved with running the Sicilian faction of the family, and there was a big power struggle with the Cotroni crime family. And so, his father ends up in going to Venezuela, and then, he's left here to, kind of, just watch things and take care of things while his father's out of the country, basically hiding from getting whacked, because he wasn't a liked man. And,
Right.
and yeah,
And the Rizzutos finally got power of the Canadian underworld, basically
yeah,
Montreal in the 1980s, right?
yeah, it really did. So, that's what happened. And then, obviously we know where Vito was involved in the '79 murder of I'm sorry, and you had the murder of Carmine Galante, and then after that, you had the murder of the three capos where
Right. And
he
we'll
was
talk about the
involved.
three
Yeah,
captos right down the line a little bit. Okay,
yeah,
so this family, they basically got they're involved in everything. They weren't like the American families where they would all
right,
pretend they're not dealing drugs,
right. That's
because
that's their big thing. Yeah.
yeah, they were distribute tons of heroin,
hmm
cocaine, hashish,
Yes.
They were laundering hundreds of $1 million.
Yeah.
They lent out millions through
hmm
loan sharking operations,
Yeah.
profited from illegal gambling, fraud, contract killings. I mean, they were doing everything. And not only that, they also were partners with who? Who would they work with?
Yeah, so a lot of different groups, but the Bonanno family's one, down in the States. So
And in
Hell's
Canada,
Angels were others, and we can get to that later maybe. There was other groups that they were involved with, other gangs.
and see, that's the thing. This is so complicated. We're going to do two parts. We're going to put out the
Yep,
main players, and we're going
yep,
to put out the story of a father's revenge.
yep.
And that's pretty much it there. And so let's start with the three captains' murderers.
Yep.
Okay, because we know Vito's involved, and nobody
Yeah.
realizes how much Vito's involved until
Mhm.
Salvatore Vitelli comes out, and
Right.
when he starts ratting on everybody, he pretty
Right.
much comes out and takes and says what happened. So
Right.
what did Sal say? How did he say that Vito was involved?
Yeah, well, what he said was that he was actually shooting as he left the closet, because you remember there were other people that had said previously that, oh, he was the one that yelled, "This is a holdup" or whatever, but
Yes.
that's not true according to Salvatore Vitali. He was actually shooting as he left the closet.
A matter of fact, he said that Vito was the first one out of the closet shooting.
Yes, exactly.
All right. And okay, so let's take it from there. Right from there, so he gets made by the Bonanos.
Yeah,
They're not
that's
sure, but what's
yeah. Yeah, that's kind of a weird story, because they're saying that he was made as a captain, but you need to understand that there's a relationship. So back in 1931, you had the commission that was established, and then territories were dealt out, and anyway, the Montreal, the territory of Montreal was pretty much given to the Bonanno family. And so, they had done a lot of work, especially, in the 50s with Galante on establishing, the drug trade and all that. But, a lot of people think, well, the Rizzuto family was some sort of, a crew within the Bonanos, but they were really independent, is what it was. And then the other thing was that, I don't know if he was actually made they're saying he was a captain, that Vito was a captain in the Bonanno family. I've not seen any evidence of that. It could be true, but what we do know is that there was tribute that this family would make for the Bonanos at Christmas time. But it was like, three
and they
hundred,
were
four
they,
hundred
they were
thousand
making up in
dollars.
Canada.
Yeah.
He was already the boss of that family, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. So they were running independent, but they were aligned with the Bonanno family, and that's what I'm seeing from all of this. So
Okay.
kind of an interesting arrangement.
And when people started flipping,
Hmm.
Vito got caught up in it. Rizzuto, right?
Yeah, he got caught up in it, and so there was a lot of basically, he was going to fight the case. And then finally, what ended up happening was he pled guilty.
He got a
Uh,
great deal. They said that he got a great deal.
yeah, yeah, exactly. He gave him and the government, they just warned him. They just wanted to say, hey, he pled guilty. We got a conviction under our belt. And so they also knew that once he was done, that they could just deport him back to Canada. And so they gave him a 10-year sentence. But they gave him a pretty hard time, though. He ended up well
In
he
Supermax.
in Supermax in ADX Florence, and he actually was in jail for 3 years waiting for trial. And so, yeah, he was 6 years. He was in ADX Florence, which is a Supermax, and then they released him after 6 years because of the 3 years that he was uh, waiting in jail for trial. And so,
And while he
anyway,
was, so he's taken off. So he went based on that. He could say, I was in the closet and I yelled,
yeah,
hold up. He would not
right,
admit that he was the one that came out shooting. So they
right.
took that and they gave him, but listen, the guy still had to go to Supermax, get locked up. So it's
Yeah,
obvious that he wasn't in a Canadian jail. Let's put it that way.
no, and they must have been really upset with him And so, they like to do that as punishment, put someone in supermax. It's really surprising. You'd think with a 10-year murder sentence that they would put someone there. It's just a little bit overkill, but that's where your most dangerous male inmates are placed, and they think he was dangerous.
But here's the problem: when he went inside, the family wasn't as feared anymore, was it?
No, and that was a lot of problems. So he didn't get out of jail. Like I was telling you, back in 2004 is when he was arrested. He didn't get out of jail until October 5th of 2012. But there was a lot of problems with the family, because especially being in supermax, how are you going to be able to get messages out to your crews or anything?
Especially in supermax, right? So you had the son running things, but all hell broke loose because factions inside the Rizzuto family and outsiders were trying to take control and get the Rizzutos out of the way. And this is where revenge comes into everything. The first murder. So explain who this guy was, and Federico Del Pescio.
Yeah. So what happened there? So this was in 2009, and that's when the murders started happening. So this was an associate of the family, and he got killed behind a restaurant called La Cantina.
And that was in August of 2009.
Yep, August 2009.
Okay, and then after he gets murdered, his son gets murdered. I'm going to play something for that in 1 minute. I'm going to put something up here. And so this is what happened. They're trying to take over. You got street gangs fighting. You got bike gangs fighting. The Rizzutos at that point, they're flailing because they're being attacked from every side. Would you pretty much say that's accurate?
Yeah. You had the Cotroni family that was still had some influence, and they were trying to retake a lot of what they had lost, 20, 30 years before. But then, you even had, there was a Toronto mafia family that was trying to extend into Montreal.
You actually have street gangs that were trying.
And then street gangs, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's because of the drugs. There's a lot of drugs that was part of this, all of these gangs. And
once you get involved in drugs, everything gets so vicious because the money is so huge. And
it's crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to play this. Let me find this real quick. Okay, I'm going to put this up and I'll play it first.
Yep.
And this is when his son gets killed.
Police in Montreal tonight are trying to make sense of yesterday's brazen daylight shooting of Nick Rizzuto Jr., the son of the alleged boss of the Montreal mob. And there are fears tonight there could be more violence to come. Amanda Pfeffer has that story.
The police tape is gone, and there's little physical evidence left of yesterday's violent murder, but emotional evidence remains.
We live right there, so it's kind of scary.
Police are still searching for a man witnesses say shot Nick Rizzuto Jr. at close range. The murder of Nick Rizzuto Jr., the son of Vito Rizzuto, the alleged head of the Montreal Mafia, adds to speculation the mob is under attack. Police are not speculating on why Nick Rizzuto was killed, but this expert on organized crime says the victim's father, Vito, was the architect of a crime consortium that included the Hells Angels and the Montreal street gangs.
After the conviction of Vito Rizzuto, many people within the mafia didn't like the idea to continue to sharing the profit with Le Rouge, with the street gangs.
Now, Nicasso says the street gangs are fighting back.
Everything is being done to know if there's any link, because we don't know if there's a link or not between all the events.
The recent violence raises the specter of another bloody turf battle not seen since the notorious biker wars of the 1990s. And that worries Lisa Poussolides. She works with a group that helps victims and their families. Her own brother, Costas, was shot dead while trying to break up what he didn't realize was a gang fight.
I don't want to see it happen again, where it becomes a war on our streets, where our children and loved ones
are walking. Meanwhile, members of the Rizzuto family are making arrangements for a funeral. U.S. authorities may grant Vito Rizzuto permission to attend his own son's funeral. He's currently serving time in a Colorado prison for his part in a triple murder. Amanda Pfeffer, CBC News.
And as we know, that triple murder was the three captains. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's in prison now. His son's killed.
Mhm.
Okay. And so you know that this has to be devastating to him because they're
Right.
going. So now they're going after the family.
Yes.
Okay. And so right after the son was killed, the brother-in-law, they went after the brother-in-law, another part of the family. Why don't you explain what happened there?
Yeah, so that was Paulo Renda, and he was the consigliere, but also Vito's brother-in-law. And so he's thought to be dead. He disappeared. So he was in Montreal when it happened, but no one's sure what happened.
Never to be
Most likely he's dead.
never to be seen again.
Right.
Okay, and a lot of times, they just kill you in the street up
Right.
in that area, but he disappeared. In the United States, the mob, a lot of guys would just disappear off the face of the earth. So this was different that Pialo disappeared.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's done. So
Mhm.
they're systematically taking out the family.
Yes.
They're going from the top. They're hitting the family now. The son-in-law's done. The son's done, and and here's the son's funeral.
Yeah.
And it was a very big funeral, though. And I'm not sure if they allowed the father to go. Do you know anything about that? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he did. I didn't see that he was there, but I could be wrong. Maybe someone knows that lives up in Montreal.
Okay, and so Augusto Contreras was next.
Yeah.
Why don't you- and explain his ties to the Rizzutos.
Yeah, so Contreras was part of the Sicilian faction that he from the old country. So he was basically had a lot of ties back to some of the mafia families in Sicily, and so he was a big he's an associate, but he was basically like a messenger or someone that was depended on by the Rizzuto family in dealing with the Sicilians. And so he ended up getting executed in broad daylight a month later after Paulo Renda. So he was also in Montreal.
And this is all happening so fast. It's all within a year period.
Yes.
I mean, you know what this makes me think, James? Did these
What's that?
guys understand what bodyguards are? Did they like take things like maybe too laid back? They didn't have bodyguards
Yeah.
and stuff.
That's a good question. I'm not sure, what happened there. I know that one thing we do know is that when Vito finally gets out, they're saying that he has an armored vehicle,
Yeah,
which
well,
would make sense.
right.
But
But here, these guys, the son had nobody around him.
no.
And then the big killing was a guy that died a gangster's death. He's 86. He's what's 86 years old.
Yep.
He doesn't have to worry about going to a nursing home suffering because why don't you tell us what happens to the father?
Yeah. And so Niccolo Rizzuto, he's the father of Vito and a gangster in his own right, as we know. But
He's the one that started the Rizzuto family.
he started the family. Yep, he's the one that broke off, from the Coltroni family, and he was in Venezuela for a few years, and so I mean he's a big deal. And anyway,
November 10th, 2010.
Yeah,
Explain what happened that day.
Yeah, a sniper kills him.
Right through the window.
There with
Right
his
through the window
wife.
of his
And
home.
yep, in his home. He was 86, a sniper. He was sitting in the kitchen, and they killed him. And so, that is a gangster's death. But
He was dead before he hit the floor. You
interestingly-
never know what hit him.
Yeah, but he's 86. I mean, that's just what's amazing to me.
He didn't have to
Someone
have a
that
stroke
old.
and not be able to speak or a heart attack. I mean,
Yeah,
he did. He
86
literally
years old.
went to sleep.
Yeah, he didn't even know it. I mean, when he hit the ground, he was already gone.
And you know, I think that's the difference between up in Canada. It doesn't sound like they were protecting their homes enough. I mean,
Yeah.
you would have, you know, first of all, you figured that you would keep your window shut, have
Yeah.
curtains on your window, especially when you know what's going on. I mean, he just lost his grandson. He sees all these men being murdered in front of him.
Yeah, maybe he thought he was protected because of his age. Maybe he, you know, it doesn't seem like, you know, when you look at the American mafia, the five families, there's certain rules and
Yeah.
guidelines.
They'll get you in the driveway, but not in the house.
Right.
In the
that type
American
of stuff.
mafia. A lot of
Yeah.
mafioso guys have been killed in the driveway.
Yeah.
But they don't knock down the doors or shoot unless you're Bugsy Siegel. But
Yeah.
they got him. That's what this kind of reminded me of, because Bugsy
Mhm.
Siegel got shot through a window.
Yeah, and that's what was kind of the used is also you know, in the Godfather movie when they tried to assassinate you know, Michael. But yeah, I mean, just very a gangster's death. That's what you could say.
And talking about gangsters, Vito's in jail. He learns that he has cancer,
Hmm.
and so he does. He explain when they let him out and when they sent him back to Canada.
Yeah, so he ends up getting out finally in 2012 and October 5th, 2012, and the U.S. deports him to Toronto.
And
And
he's been
so,
in prison for 2 years
yeah.
after they taken control up there, and his
Hmm.
family got wiped out. So he
Right.
had to sit and think about this for 2 years.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And so what happened was supposedly he did meet with you know, with some of the five families before he went, or I mean, while he was in Toronto, and he was staying low for I don't know a few months before he moved back to Montreal. But
So when he got out, he went to Toronto, stayed there away from Montreal,
yeah,
and then he came back to Montreal with a bang, didn't he?
oh yeah, definitely did, and so you know, basically he wanted to send a message that he was back and with the armored vehicle and you know the well guarded apartment, he
And he
wanted
made
people
sure
to
that he
know
had
he
this.
wasn't easy prey.
Okay. Okay. So let's explain who this is right here. This is Joe DeMalo, is it?
Yeah, yeah, and so what had happened was, you know, now it's time for the revenge, right? And
Yes.
so you know before this, there, you know, we don't have the photos, but there were three drug dealers that were killed
Yes.
in November 12th. You know, for basically there was a Rizzuto ally that had gotten abducted, but then in the same month, this Joe DeMalo, he was an ally to the Cotroni family,
Right.
and so they end up executing him in the driveway of his home there in north of Montreal.
And then, you know, the man's at this point, the man's very sick.
Yeah.
You know, he's wilting away, and it
Hmm.
seems like he wants to get everybody. He wants to get the people involved that murdered his father and his son.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so the next person that gets killed would be Sal Cahuta. Is that how you say his name?
Yes. Salvatore Calotti.
Okay, and what happened to him? And who was he?
Yeah. And so yeah, they were part of the Rizzuto organization. They were insiders, but they had actually had a falling out with Vito, and so Calote was shot in the head and killed while he was sitting in his car,
And there
and
was another
so
guy
and they
that was
thought he was involved in his father's killing. Is what it
right.
was.
Matter of fact,
Yeah,
they thought he was the one that pulled the trigger,
right, exactly.
and
They thought
and
he
they
did.
and
Hmm.
they believe that this one. I'm sorry about the bad picture. I can't find many of them. Marino
Yeah.
Gallo.
Uh huh.
How did he go?
Yeah, so they actually went. You know, he had been out of the country. He'd gotten deported 2 years earlier in 2011, but they went down there and shot him dead. He was in Acapulco, Mexico, outside a restaurant. And was killed.
And you know, here's the thing. Uh, when the final killing, uh, he died. He died a month after the final killing of
Yep.
his revenge, but he never got revenge he didn't get his personal revenge on
Right.
the guy that shot his son.
Right.
So once he died 2 years later, they say this is the guy that shot his son. His name was Duncan Kennedy Joseph. And he was killed in 2014. And they got the one that killed his son. I mean, the police always knew he was the number one suspect in killing the son, and he was part of a street gang, drug dealers.
Right.
And that's how they got him. So when you think about this man gets out of prison, he knows he's dying, and he wants revenge toward. This is like one of those those Shakespeare plays.
Yeah, right. A Shakespearean tragedy. Right.
And this guy's like, you know what? Just let me live. Let me just get these guys that killed my son and my father.
Yeah.
And no one's saying that Rizzuto was an evil man.
Yeah.
That did many evil things.
Yeah.
So sometimes you just shouldn't mess with somebody that evil, huh?
Yeah, that's true. And a lot about Rizzuto, what's interesting to me is how, it seems like that he might have been the kind of the glue that held stuff together. And then when he went to prison, just everything, fell apart. But, you had all of these, you had like the Hells Angels that he was able to negotiate the peace with them and the other motorcycle gangs and all these other groups that just hate each other. He was actually able to bring them together. But then when you think about it, of course, once he's not around, they're going to start doing this stuff.
Yeah, it's like the minute he hit that prison,
yeah,
that was it. And another thing about Canada too, it's a very progressive, liberal type country, as we know.
Right.
And sentences there are not as long as the United States. They don't,
right.
RICO, sure, they got RICO there, but not like the United States.
Right.
That's a weapon that the feds use here on everything.
Exactly.
So these guys up there, when they commit a murder, they don't do a lot of years, do they?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they here you do life, and you got progressive sentences up there. So a lot of these guys, they kill somebody, they're back out. So how active is the mob now up there?
Yeah, it's still active. There's they believe his one of his sons is headed in the family. I don't know if we want to mention his name, but
yeah, well, it's Canada. I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Leonardo. Okay, Leonardo Rizzuto. Yeah. So and they still have ties to the Sicilian mafia. They're still dealing with drugs. They still deal with narcotics has always been part of this. They're still doing some bookmakings. They've got loan sharks. In the past they were involved a lot in the government election, especially Niccolo, the father. He was involved in a lot of that along with the Cotroni family. So, but that's probably less involved with being able to influence the elections. But at one time, there were about 500 made men and associates as part of the Rizzuto family.
Do you think the son was a good leader?
Vito?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, they called him the John Gotti of Canada, or the John Gotti of Montreal. He was very well respected in the street and by most everyone. But he was scary too.
I think when you separate him from John Gotti, he was a lot longer. But like John Gotti, he took his jail sentences, and didn't sing on nobody.
Right, exactly. He had a 30-year career pretty much leading the family,
And I wonder how he
Vito.
felt when all these friends in the Bonanos started flipping. Now, he was close to Joe Messina. He was close to Sal Vitelli. He was close to these guys. They called him down to help out to kill the three captains. And then they start flipping left and right. And he
I can't imagine that. For a while I'm wondering. Yeah, I mean they had been providing money to the Bonanos, the tribute each year at Christmas. You know, it's kind of a gift, is what it was. And so, yeah, I
Do you
don't
think they had a lot more money than the Bonanno family?
with drugs. Yeah,
But
yeah, I could.
I would think that they were much wealthier.
Yeah, I do too, and they had the connections to the old world. I mean, not saying the Bonanos didn't. They obviously did, but no, they were able to. They were more in the middle of all the, you know, the drug trafficking. And it was more than just heroin. You know,
Yeah,
coke and
of course.
other
It
stuff.
was
They were
everything.
dealing, and that's why I think it was more because they were actually dealing with the Colombians with cocaine. They dealt with Mexico for drugs, Venezuela as well.
And they
So
were even doing contract killings,
yeah.
outside contract killings. A
Well,
lot of families.
Bonanos would bring them up because,
Yes.
you know, because they wouldn't, or bring them down, I guess, because they didn't know who they, you know, the people they were trying to go after wouldn't necessarily know who these guys were. They'd never seen them before. So yeah, they'd bring them down to do these killings.
And all the families probably had some type of ties one way or another, but not like the Bonanos. But
Yeah, it
the
was given,
Genovese,
that territory was given to them. Yeah.
so the Genovese family tried to do something with them. Vinnie Gorgeous, and he put Dominic Shicali in charge of it. So that tells you everything. That all
Yeah.
backfired.
Yeah. Yeah, they were wanting to try to reinstitute a lot of that. What was it? Some of the drug trafficking, probably other rackets as well. But yeah, it didn't go too far.
Now, there's a series on. Have you ever seen a series on Netflix about the Rizzutos?
No, I haven't. I didn't know about it till you'd mentioned it earlier. That's fascinating to me. I
Yeah,
want to see it.
and it's a 2-year miniseries. I'm gonna watch it again to see exactly how accurate it is. I know some of it's not accurate because um, the way they talked about the father's death, the son's death, yes, but then they put a lot of Hollywood into it. But I want to see how accurate it is, so I'm going to watch it again, just to give it an eye. You know, I like to do that after when these movies come out, and after I studied. I watched that movie before I knew anything
Yeah.
about the Canadian mafia.
Right, right. Yeah, and saying I just wanted to make sure everyone understood what we were referring to a minute ago was the Bonanno family was involved, you know, with
Right.
you know, Vinnie Gorgeous and everything. But what we were saying is that the Genovese family had been trying to establish relationships as well. So hopefully I didn't confuse people with that because, you know, Genovese family obviously had
Yeah, I'm
territories
sorry,
in
and no, that's my
Connecticut and
fault too, because
Yeah.
as we know, Vinnie Gorgeous was part of the Bonanno family.
Right, but the other families have been trying
The
to do
Genovese,
business
yes.
with them as well.
They
So
never really had the success the Bonanno families had, but that's because Joe Messino was in charge.
right,
Before he became a rat, he was a good leader,
yes,
and he had a good he had a good rapport with this guy.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
So
Yeah,
what
and
was-
that had lost stability 30 years when he was able to run the family, and so there was a lot of stability there. But except, of course, when he was in prison. But they're willing to. There's still 21 related
unsolved.
murders that haven't been solved. Yeah,
Yeah, and
and
God
murders
knows how.
happening last year. There's still murders happening up there. It's not like down here where they just put you on the shelf. Murders are still happening.
Well, up there too, it's not like they're burying everybody with RICO.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean that I'm sure they have their own form of RICO, but
Right.
it's obvious that because that would wipe all that violence right out if they started putting
Yeah,
everybody in
exactly.
prison for RICO.
Yeah.
But then you got street gangs involved and bikers.
Mhm.
They don't care about that RICO or anything like that.
Right.
You
And I
know,
don't hear too much about as many informants. I don't think they're as developed. I mean, you do have informants obviously
of
up there,
course.
but they're not as it's not as prevalent. And again, you know, most people can handle a few years in prison. That's in this life. You know, they're willing to handle it. But when it becomes 50 years or life in prison, that's when you start seeing a lot of these guys. You know, flipping. And so,
they'll accept a 10-year sentence.
yeah,
Basically.
a lot of them, some won't, but most will. I'm talking
Yeah.
out in the States. Yeah.
And then we're talking Canadian prisons compared to the United States, which
Yeah, they're a lot nicer, is my understanding. I
yeah,
haven't been to one, but yeah, and I guess the Rocky or the not Royal Mounted Canadian Police handle pretty much everything, don't they? They have their own FBI type group.
I am not
And
sure how their system works.
yeah, it's a
If
little
anybody from
different.
Canada watches this, please, we're going
Yeah.
to do a part 2 of this. And
Yeah.
I don't know when, sometime this month, but we're going to
Yep.
get deeper into this stuff. We basically gave you the players and told you about the father's revenge and what they did to his family, to
Right.
wipe that family out. I mean, it was just, you know, no bodyguards around, guys
Right.
walking up the street being killed. I mean, what else can you say about that? It's here. A lot of guys walk together. It's hard to get at the
Sure.
guys, especially when wars break out. They call
Yeah.
it going to the mattresses.
Right. Yeah.
Here they had
exactly.
this
Hitting
war
the
go-
mattresses. Yeah.
Here they had the war going on, and they were drinking coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. That was. Yeah. That's true. And yeah, and that's part of it. Obviously up there is that there was it is a different culture as well.
yeah.
That's another thing. And then also there were some French gangs there in Montreal as well that was competing for a lot of the business. So it's a big melting pot.
It is.
Montreal.
Montreal, forget it. It's
Yeah.
probably the biggest melting pot, one of the biggest melting pot cities in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Between that and Toronto, both of them. Yeah.
So what would you, before we end this, I'm sorry, let me get this. Please, people, if you like this, please sub. Okay, let me get this stuff up. See, I don't even think about this stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, first of all, if you want to donate some money to me, my Cash App's underneath here. And also PayPal's underneath there. You can also hit the heart and donate to there. This is how we make our money. If you can't,
Yep.
all I ask is that people please just watch the commercials, because that's how we make our money. We make our money off the commercials. And that's why we do these videos, because lives are nice, but I don't like doing a lot of them anymore because I really enjoy dropping these videos. Do you enjoy dropping these videos, James?
Yeah, no, I really do. And especially with this, I mean, you don't hear a lot of stories, at least down in the States, about Montreal and the Canadian Mafia. It's really interesting. And so folks understand that, when we're doing this research, this is like if you were to do one video on the Gambino family, how can you do that? So you just have to do some sort of overview. And that's what we tried to do, because what we thought was interesting was this Shakespearean tragedy, of Vito. And so we just thought that would be an interesting topic for today. But
And we learned from our mistakes. When we did Phil Linetti, we were all over the place because there was so much going on, and we were trying to push it. So now we're like, let's just talk about the players first, the main players.
Exactly.
And then the next video, we won't talk about the main players so much, but we'll talk about the drug trade, biker gangs being involved with the Rizzuto family. And, it's kind of funny. I wonder if they're related to Phil Rizzuto, the old shortstop from the Yankees.
Oh yeah, he was one of the best. He was. I remember Phil Rizzuto. But yeah, I think what I'd like to see is if people would be willing to, put in comments if there's certain topics within this they'd like us to talk about. I'd love to, for people to share their thoughts.
And if we made any mistakes on the Rizzuto family, and you Canadian people know this, please let us know underneath, so we know that we made the mistake. And we're not trying to be a couple know-it-alls here. We pretty much take what we see and put it together. So when we do this, we're going to make mistakes, especially when we're talking about a family that's not involved. It's not really part of the system here. People don't. You think of 5 families. You don't think of the. But there was a book called The Sixth Family.
Yep. And
a bestseller, and it was, and that talked about them being like the Sixth Family. And people will say, "Oh, the Delvacantes," or how do you say that?
Del Cavalcante.
Yes, of New Jersey. But you know what? This family up in Montreal, they were doing all sorts of things. I mean, much bigger than most of the families down here. I mean, they were at the level of the Genovese and Gambinos, if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here. Please hit the like button. If you have not hit the like button, please hit it. And also sub if you have not subbed. We're getting close to 10,000. Okay, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was fun. Thank you.